Okay, I think we are good to go. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our first virtual monthly social of 2022 for Toronto. Thank you all for taking the time to be here. We've got an exciting evening ahead. I would just like to say upfront that you probably got a little pop-up already, but this event is going to be recorded. My name is Cameron Laidlaw. I am the Passive House practice lead for Morrison Hershfield, based here in Toronto. And I am one of the original organizers of the old PHPP user group, which I'm seeing a lot of familiar names in the chat from. I'm here with the other three organizers of that group. We've recently, or in the new year, partnered with Passivhaus Canada to kind of bring back a sort of, kind of semi-formal or really informal event focused on the Toronto Passivhaus community and getting people talking, learning from each other and sort of just, connecting and building a bit of a community here. So with that out of the way, the first thing on the agenda here is for me to give the floor over to the CEO of Passivhaus Canada, Chris Ballard, to say a few words. Take it away, Chris.
Well, thank you, Cameron, and thank you everyone for being here tonight. I'm Chris Ballard, and for the past 2 years and a few months, I've been the CEO of Passivhaus Canada. And while I'm not in Toronto, I live just north of Toronto in beautiful Aurora. As Passivhaus grows across Canada, it's really growing in Ontario and in the GTHA. So glad to see so many people here today. And listen, before I go any further, I wanted to, I'll tell you a little bit about Passivhaus Canada. We are a national advocacy organization. We have focused on education. We teach over 2,000 people a year, whether it be designer, consultant, tradespeople, that sort of thing. So we are really the leader in teaching the Passivhaus standard across Canada, and it's something I'm quite proud. And we do a lot of advocacy with Toronto, Ottawa, and the provinces, especially with Toronto these days with the Toronto Green Standard. So you folks may be interested in what we're up to there. And we're certainly interested in hearing from you about the challenges you face when you try to build to the Passivhaus standard or build to the Passivhaus standard in Toronto. So as you know, we're a membership-based social enterprise. Our headquarters is in Victoria, but I'm located here along with a growing staff in the Toronto area. We have a Toronto office, and along with education, we offer a lot of technical support to our members. So if you're a member and you have you're hitting some bumps along the way, we're here to help you. We do have members and staff and instructors located all across Canada, and it's just delightful to see not only the growth in interest in Passivhaus, but also the number of people who are coming on board, especially here in Ontario. A couple of things. I wanted to make sure that I acknowledge SIGA, which is the sponsor of tonight's event. So thank you, SIGA. And especially tonight, I wanted to recognize 4 folks who've helped pull this together and will be doing the heavy lifting tonight, because after this, I just get to fade into the background and be an observer like everyone else. 4 people. Vaisman, thank you for taking a leadership role tonight. Hermain is an architect. He also does some training for Passivhaus Canada. He's the founder of Green Tectonics, a design company specialized in low carbon buildings, where he works with clients to achieve low carbon, high performance standards in buildings. And I've seen some of the great work that you've done in Toronto, Herman, and it really is groundbreaking. Maureen Sanchez is on tonight's call as one of the leads. Great to see you, Maureen, and thank you very much for being here. Maureen is, she's also a Passivhaus instructor, but she is the senior Passivhaus consultant at RDH Building Science. She focuses on large-scale mixed-use projects. She also works with the City of Toronto to implement its zero emissions building framework and to deliver better performing buildings. And I know that Maureen is held in high regard for or by a number of folks in Toronto that I get to deal with on almost a daily basis. Cameron Laidlaw is here. Cameron is a passive house practice lead at Morrison Hershfield. Cameron's experience includes working with numerous product manufacturers to develop passive house component compliant products for the North American market. Thank you, Cameron. And last but certainly not least, Jesse Matthews is here. And Jesse is an airtightness specialist and a certified passive house tradesperson working in the Toronto area on passive house and high performance projects. He has over 15 years of on-site experience in construction, working as an installer, as well as performing quality assurance. And Jesse's previous passive house experience includes field review and testing as a build science technologist with RDH Building Science and as a carpenter and an air boss. My aim in life is to be one day an air boss. I want the hat. Probably never going to get it. Jesse's beaten me to it. He's been an air boss with the Fourth Pig Green and Natural Construction. And he shares his expertise with those who are looking to become certified passive house tradespeople. He has done a lot of instruction for us. So all of these four, I doubt we need to give you much more of an introduction than we have. But I want to say again, thank you to Hermaine, to Maureen Sanchez, to Cameron, and to Jesse for helping us to organize tonight's event. And with that, I will turn the floor back over to our hosts, and I get to sit in the audience now. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Chris. So before we get into our proceedings here, a couple of pieces at the outset. First, I would like to take a moment to recognize that Passive House Canada acknowledges the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Métis, Inuit, and First Nations people that call this land home. So for the event tonight, I'll just give you a brief overview of what we have planned, have in store. First, we're going to invite our event sponsor, SIGA, to say a few words. Following that, we will three of the four of us organizers will be presenting kind of some sort of.
Oh my God! The thing that happened to your pizza.
I think somebody's unmuted there.
What that is?
Sorry. So yes, we have three short presentations, sort of just to kind of bring up a couple of items that a few of us who are working in the passive house space have sort of seen come to the forefront. Since perhaps we last met, as the PHPP user group previously. So we just kind of want to get the conversation started, and that's really what this event tonight is about. As I said at the outset, we're sort of looking to have this be pretty conversational, and to really present information and have discussions that that the community is interested in hearing. So we're going to sort of throw some stuff out there, and we're happy to have feedback, answer questions, and chat about it as well afterwards. After we do that, actually, sorry, there's another small piece in there. We're going to be splitting up into breakout rooms just to give everybody a chance to sort of introduce themselves, say hi. I know a lot of the people on the calls do already know each other, but seeing as this is our initial event, we wanted to, give everybody a chance to say hi and sort of, break the ice or whatever you want to say there. So without further ado, let's get started. I'd like to thank SIGA as our sponsor for this event. SIGA is a manufacturer, developer, and distributor of air and wind tight products for building construction. They strive for a world of zero energy loss buildings. I'll now pass it over to Hans, trainer and product advisor at SIGA, to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about SIGA.
Yeah, thanks, Cameron. It's a yeah, you almost took my intro away. That's okay. I'm excited to be here, and it's great to see so many passionate passive house enthusiasts. Maybe some of you even got sucked in from a video that I made in 2013, Passive House Explained. But yeah, I wanted to just give you a quick introduction of who SIGA is. And we're a high performance, or we're a manufacturer, a Swiss manufacturer of high performance tapes, such as the Wiglove and the MyBest. You may have seen those on Passive House projects in the past. And we work with builders, architects, and engineers to help them achieve their airtightness goals. And how do we do that? Well, first of all, with great products, but also not to ignore the services, such as lunch and learns, site trainings, and workshops. Yeah, I will leave my contact information in the chat in case anybody is interested in reaching out, finding out more about what we can do for you and help you achieve your airtightness on your next Passive House project. We're not exclusive to Passive House, Net Zero, any other high performance project as well, but we love high performance Passive House, and that's where our heart beats. And yeah, thank you very much for your attention at this point, and I'll hand it back to Cameron.
Thank you so much, Hans. Yeah. So as I mentioned before, the first kind of item that we have on the agenda here is to jump into a couple of breakout rooms. I think we have, yeah, we've got about 50 people on the call, which is amazing. So the Passive House Canada staff, I believe, are just setting up those rooms. And sorry, I'm just, okay, yeah, they've got a message. Opening them up in a minute. All right, perfect. So can I pass it over to one of the Passive House Canada folks to coordinate everybody or let them know how that's going to go?
But we were almost, I'm sorry, Sam, and I don't remember which one. There was another person that we didn't end up like introducing.
Well, we are going to have a second set of breakout sessions, so everybody will get another chance to chat in a little bit. But I hope everybody did, at least get to, or most of us, I suppose, got to introduce ourselves and say hi. A big part of running these events for us is really that community building side of it. So, we understanding that we're working with Zoom right now, trying to do what we can to sort of at least give people a bit of a sense of togetherness and opportunities to chat that we might not otherwise get in these times of COVID. So on to the next part of our session. We've got a couple of short presentations that we're gonna a couple of us are going to give, just to again introduce a few topics kind of interest of us or learnings from specific projects, and sort of maybe even raise a couple of questions or challenges, things that we see in the Passive House field that as sort of a group, this group and the Passive House movement at large is sort of grappling with, or developments that we're hoping to see, or places that we're looking to keep pushing this whole thing forward. So I won't go on any more about that. We'll just jump into it. And first up, we have Herman.
Okay, good. So I want to say that I'm getting excited about seeing you guys in person. Kind of one of the things that we like from the PHPP users group is we used to, this is important to know and learn, but it was very important to meet, to see people once a month and have a beer and just chat about life. And so of course we kind of lost that, but I'm feeling excited about like going back. And I could feel some people that used to come to the meetings that they're also excited and they share that. So I just wanted to share with all of you guys. Yeah, it's good. We're building momentum. Okay, let's move into the technical part. So I have to share, right? So how do I share screen? So, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about the mechanical part of the this project that we actually visited a long time ago when it was in construction, specifically about commissioning, or this was like the last thing that we needed to get the certification. Super quick explanation. We first designed the ERV to be to have these type of settings. We needed to have a HEPA filter on top of the filtration, the current the filtration of the ERV, and this was the way we set it up. It wasn't a good way. We had trouble with the installers. There's a lack of people who knows how to do it and who wants to do it properly, at least in the GTA. So anyway, we ended up changing the system from an HRV to an ERV due to low humidity levels and other issues that we didn't think about. And as the people were already living in the house, we tried moving the HEPA filter into the warm side, and it ended up working better. We didn't have to run the fan that's internal to the box. So anyway, we cleaned it up. We changed the unit, and we optimized the installation of on the basement. Big issues we had. A lot of leaks, at least on the basement area. We also had 2 installers. The first installer was good, and he did the main ducting. It was quite nicely sealed, but then the second installer didn't do a great job, and we have leaks all over. So this is particularly important due to a certification requirement. So we seal all the areas that we saw, and we felt that there was some cold coming out on the basement. And we had the commissioning, which is at the very end. You have to bring someone, an external commissioner, and check that all the supply, if you add up all the supply, will have less than 10% different with adding up all the returns. And we didn't pass. So that was a bummer. This was last year in August, September. And even though we did the seal of we sealed all the ducting, we did know where was the issue. And this is part of the QA/QC process. We knew that there was a duct that was not properly connected. And we opened up the wall, and it was there. And so we fixed it. We did the fixing, and nicely we passed the evaluation from the commissioner. This was literally 10 days ago. So we're quite happy. We are around 5% difference in between. So this shows the importance of having a quite high quality supervision and installation. So I do think when we decided to start this, when we were talking about how to start, this is kind of my big topic, and I wanted to bring it as something that we should certainly develop knowledge and capacity, and yeah, to make to have less headaches, let's call it that way, at least on the residential area. This is, Part 9 buildings. So that's it from me.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you, Herman. I know there was certainly some interest in our breakout room in the ventilation side of things. So I think we can have some interesting conversation about that after. So next up, we have Marine, who is going to present on something that is a surprise to me. I don't actually remember, or I don't know if I ever knew what it was, but we'll all find out together.
Talking a little bit about deep retrofit. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, cool, perfect. So I didn't come here today too much with solutions, but more with big questions that I'm hoping we can discuss as a community. So definitely we're seeing more passive house, bigger and wider and different types of archetypes, and we're working through these solutions, and I think it's going pretty well. You see the momentum going. However, I've been, I guess, mulling this over on my own through COVID over the past year, like the questions about deep retrofit, because we do need, like, I think the challenge that we're facing in the coming years is really that question of mass scale deep retrofit, and to deliver, how to say that, not only to deliver deep retrofit, but to deliver them at a rate that is almost inconceivable to all of us. So where is this coming from? Well, we have the carbon tax that is taking a very steep increase over the coming years. So I highlighted the numbers in orange, and you can see that carbon tax, at least in Canada, is really going to shift the operational cost profiles that we're going to have, especially for retrofit buildings, right? Like new build is still on there, but for like poorly performing existing buildings connected to gas, that could be, you know, whatever you think is happening right now, your operational costs could look very, very different in less than 5 years. We've done a few calculations on some of our clients' portfolio, and you can see that within, I think, the upcoming 5 to 6 years, you come at a point where you pay as much for gas as you pay for the carbon tax. And then if you move it all the way to 2030, you're probably paying 2/3 carbon tax, 1/3 gas bill. So it's pretty crazy. I didn't think it would go that fast. So really, you know, pushing us towards electrification as well. So really understanding how this is going to affect existing buildings. And we do now have a Toronto framework to get our existing buildings toward net zero. And again, as much as I am extremely happy to start seeing these slides, and we should hear more about it in the coming year, this is still like work in progress. I think we should have a final draft this year. You can see that the timelines are pretty tight, right? Like we're talking about upgrading most of our existing buildings to passive house level, you know, passive house like levels of performance by 2040. So where does that bring me? It brings me to every existing building needing a plan. And I don't think we've thought about this yet. So thinking about the plan, we've heard some of our clients saying, well, we already have a plan, like we have, you know, capital planning, like, isn't that what this is all about? And we kind of know where we're going. And thinking further, I started seeing a lot of gaps into all that. So a bit of a complicated slide, but bear with me. What I was trying to overlay on that slide, again, you can see how much I'm mulling over all of this. There's a lot, but what you're seeing is what we typically see as a capital plan with like different kits, different portion of the buildings being upgraded within their respective timelines. And rather than trying to describe how we're getting to the 2040, 2040 net zero ready buildings, I was also looking at, can we still trust our actual baseline? Because people still think that the baseline is a baseline. What we've always done is what we will always do. And that baseline has so many gaps in there. So taking, and I'm being very honest here, taking any capital plan that we're receiving from any of our clients, what is missing out of that plan? Well, we're missing, oops, sorry about that. We're missing in blue, as you can see, any type of upcoming code or any mitigation, like, working towards mitigation measures. So just in my examples, my example here, 2022, you might be replacing your gas equipment, but we know that in Vancouver, starting really soon, starting 2025, we won't be able to replace gas equipment, right? So we're going to have to switch to all electric. So getting that understanding of the like-for-like replacement that you might have planned might not happen, or thinking about existing building codes that become more and more stringent, and whatever type of ventilation you might have had, if it wasn't an ERV, for you not to think about like-for-like replacement, because anything that isn't quite as efficient as HRVs or ERVs, for example, with ventilation, might not cut it. So are these bits of money missing from our capital planning? Same thing, thinking a little bit more ahead as well about adaptation measures in terms of replacements. So it's the same type of question to say, am I allowed to, or am I able to replace like for like? So for example, in our case, the big chunk here, which was the main one, I'm sure you guys got that, like the window is very expensive. But when I look at the lifetime of my windows, it needs to withstand conditions that it's going to see between 2023 all the way to 2048. Do I understand clearly what are the weather conditions that I'm going to, climate conditions that I'm going to face in 2048? Well, maybe we need to start thinking more about, triple glazing or low solar heat gains coefficient, because the climate that we're experiencing right now is kind of different from the one the one predicted by 2040, 2050, 2060, and further. So as a small note, I'll refer you to the study done in Toronto with the 2040 predicted weather. And you can see that things are significantly different already. Same thing with your HVAC. Let's say it's HVAC, like heating and cooling. Well, maybe you weren't foreseeing that much cooling right now, but if your HVAC is going to have to withstand all the way until like 2043 in this graph, then have you accounted for extra cooling loads, extra ventilation loads if you need to ventilate more for the summer? So really all these questions, rephrasing, saying, what are the climate adaptation measures that we're going to need to, implement, and what is the cutoff point at which it needs to be implemented? So that before you reach that cutoff point, you make sure that adaptation measure is integrated within your own current plan, which, again, we're a little bit far from seeing that from our clients. And then finally, in orange as well, because the climate conditions might change so much depending on how good or bad we're doing in terms of climate, climate change mitigation, you might need to even add whole new measures that are not even part of your plan to start with. And where is that bucket of money? Like, I know, thinking about like condo owners and other, other institutions having, a portfolio to manage, you cannot keep going with like new extra pot of money that you have to bring out of nowhere. So it's really raising interesting questions as to what should be the plan and how should we help the community, and how should we help a client planning ahead with all of that. So on that note, I'm just, we're talking about every building needing a plan. And what is really important to me is not only should we have a good plan, but the sentence on the screen is about avoiding carbon lock-in. So really avoiding doing little pieces which then make our building emit carbon at a moment where it's absolutely crucial for them not to emit that carbon. So it's about avoiding like light retrofits and going all the way, to deep retrofits straight away. It doesn't need to be done in one go, but you need to have, every building needs a deep retrofit plan that starts tomorrow and sets up all the steps to get us to 2040 net zero, net zero ready building. And also making sure that in addition to all that work, which is a little bit new for most of the industry, we don't forget climate adaptation measures and resiliency measures. So when I see all of this, I feel a little bit, a bit of a daunting task in front of us, but I'm hoping that by bringing this to the community, finding ways to look at it and bringing more brains together, not only technical, but from, investors and owners and occupants and insurance people, because, insurance is on net zero ready buildings versus existing building will look very different. Like by trying to bring all these brains together, trying to see if we get a chance at cracking that tough challenge ahead of us. So there you go, bit of a download on my brain and questions.
Nice. It really important questions, and I'm sure we can have a good discussion about that as well afterwards. So I also have a couple of slides just to share, sort of building off of some of what Maureen mentioned about really we need to get to this level of performance. We need to get to this kind of passive house, net zero ready, whatever you want to call it. I mean, we're talking about passive house here. We think everybody on this call thinks that that's an awesome way to get to that goal. And sort of in service of that, the thing that I wanted to talk about, as I just try to share my screen here and get my presentation up, is specifically about how to bring us up to that level and how to really make it more accessible in some ways. What we've seen with Passive House, let's say the Passive House movement as a whole in the last 4 or 5 years has been this scaling up, right? It's, historically it was a lot of single family homes. That is still happening for sure. But we've seen growing interest from, all levels of government, from developers, from, people that are building municipal facilities, all different types of buildings that they have different challenges than the challenges that were faced by the first Passive House projects. And one of the spots that that I have seen these challenges kind of manifest is in the availability of components, and sort of just saying, okay, we've got this building that is concrete or is using steel construction. We can't use the Larson truss on this condo tower. We need a different solution. It just doesn't apply. And so, kind of in that vein, anybody who has worked on a Passive House project can tell you that really the way to, or a way to kind of make your life a lot easier, and this applies to every system in the building, but is to use these Passive House certified components, right? Everybody's aware of, anybody that's working on a residential project knows about Zender. They're the big guys in the industry, right? They have their certificates, they have, a full suite of products, they have, tailor-made solutions. And the important part from the Passive House perspective is they've been tested to the standards that Passive House wants to see, and the performance is known. We don't have to ask any questions. We can sort of plug and play with that. And so, you can see an example of a certificate there that is for a Zender system in specific, but there are there's a whole range of these products. And a lot of the time with design teams, when I'm chatting with them, it's it's a lot about windows and ventilation systems are kind of the two that we talk about, which are two really critical ones for sure. But as we sort of move to this medium and larger scale, I think there's actually a real opportunity there to take advantage of what the Passive House Institute offers, which is certification of systems of all types. You can see I've listed a whole bunch there. If you want, you can have certified heat pumps, certified drain water heat recovery, even construction systems, wall, roofs, and floors. And what this does in terms of developing that plan, maybe on the project level, is you can build your energy model. You can say, okay, this is what we need to get to that end goal, that net zero ready, that Passive House certifiable point. For those that might be newer to Passive House and might not know, Passive House uses absolute energy targets. So you have to meet this amount of energy. You have this much budget for your whole building. Where you use it is up to you. If you want to use a really, really good window and kind of pull back a bit on your wall insulation, you can do it. It's really trade-off based. As long as you're meeting that maximum, or staying within your total budget, you're good to go. But as a result, every piece sort of depends on every other piece. So if you have a really, really good ventilation system, again, you can, slack a bit on, not slack, but, you use a less high performing window as an example. But if you're working with a system that, let's say is perhaps steel construction, or if you have a cladding attachment system that has an unknown impact on your thermal performance of your wall, you don't want to model an R30 wall when you're only getting an R12 wall. That's obviously going to change all the math. And when you correct your PHPP model, your energy model, you're going to go, oh, we're not at the 15 we need to be at to certify. We're at 21 all of a sudden. And again, anybody that's been in that situation knows how hard you have to work to get from 21 back down to 15. So what I really see is this, the sort of being able to solidify your assumptions earlier in the process is really one of the godsends that I see of these certified components. We know it's the case with windows. We know it's the case with ventilation systems. And actually, I've just got a little simple graphic here showing my sort of thoughts on component availability, right? We have a really good selection of windows, specifically or particularly for residential applications. We do have a decent selection for non-residential too. We've even got some Canadian homegrown curtain wall systems as well, that are certified components. We've got a decent selection of ventilation systems. We don't have dozens, but we have a good selection here. One caveat I'll put on, I've got the green circle around the windows, and I noticed that I captured the door in there. Doors for non-residential projects, very challenging, or large projects, let's say, very challenging. Jesse is smiling. I'm sure he's, anybody who's worked on one of these projects knows that is kind of a big pain point. And sort of like Maureen was getting into, I don't have a perfect answer to that, but it is something that as a group, I think is solvable. And, I think what we saw a few years ago was a real big push around Windows, getting Windows certified. It was really hard, 5 years ago or there wasn't the same amount of selection. It was a lot of importing product from Europe. That was great product, but it was mostly imported, which can affect your lead times. It can be hard to make the case for, obtaining replacement parts, things like that. So it was really great to see a lot of Canadian or North American manufacturers pick up on that and say, yes, we see the business case for this. We see that this is where we need to go. We want to go and get our component certified. And, for some of them, it was, hey, we're seeing RFPs come out and they're saying you can only bid if you have a certification from PHI. So, it was kind of a push and a pull on that front. And so, the big red circle that I've got there is the envelope. That's the place where we haven't seen quite as much. There are, my last slide here is just, this is the Canadian selection of certified assemblies. So this is wall, roof, and floor systems. There aren't a whole lot. It's only 3 manufacturers. And, by and large, these are for smaller projects. They're great for those smaller projects. But when we're talking about, I heard in our breakout room, somebody was working on a condo that is looking to go passive house. We're not going to do a double stud like wood wall on that kind of system. We're going to need a different solution, and those solutions, they exist, and there are really progressive companies developing them. I think one of the tricks, or one of the things that I personally am trying to work on, is sort of like we did with Windows, bring those people into the conversation and say, hey, this is where we're going. This is where we want to go. This is what we need. We need you to give it to us. We know you can deliver it, but we sort of need to bring those different parties together. So that's sort of maybe a challenge that I put out to everybody. If you're having those conversations with manufacturers, I'm happy to talk to anybody at any time. This is one of my passion projects in Passive House is working on these certified systems, and working with manufacturers, getting them to go down this path. And in the end, it really only benefits the whole Passive House movement. It makes it easier for every subsequent team that wants to do this. They don't have to have all these open questions and be surprised, later in design when everybody's, timetables get crunched and everybody's stressing out because we just found out, oh God, our PHPP assumption for this is off by 25%, and you have to rework something at the last minute. So I will leave it there for now. But again, something that I'm more than happy to. Whoops. how do I cancel my share screen here? Something that I'm more than happy to chat with folks about during the Q&A. Okay.
And Cameron, sorry, just to your point, I think it's you have such a valid point here, and I just want to reiterate that the more of us are talking to suppliers, I think the more we'll get that moving, because we're having this conversation with so many ERV and HRV manufacturers. So I think there's a lot currently under certification process. I think that we should see come to the market fairly soon, but the more of us asking, the more they know we're serious about it. And similarly with, you know, working on fairly challenging and large buildings, we have to work on panelized systems, and it's exactly as you're saying, Cameron. Like, you start with one thing and then you're like, oh, but there's a clip here, oh, there's a nail there, oh, and there's like a chicken head there, and then you're like, you're seeing your performance just like getting shaved
bit by bit by bit. No, it's and you know what, it's a great, like, it is why I really do think Passivhaus is an awesome way to get to the goal that we're trying to get to, because they do account for those things, right? Like, if you're talking to PHI, or if you're having your project certified, a certifier is going to see that stuff, and they're going to say, did you account for those screws? Did you account for those cladding attachments? Did you account for the extra studs, or, you know, whatever? And so asking those questions kind of up front, and kind of front loading it, and really, like, I think there's even a bit to it that's like, in the sort of, let's say, medium term, like, each individual project shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel in that way, right? Like, they shouldn't necessarily have to ask those questions. It's like, we know there's a window, we can plug and play, right? Just like the ventilation system. And, you know, shaving off some of those rough edges or whatever, I think is something I see as a real big way to push this sort of to the next level, and to make the projects that are, you know, in process of design and early stages right now really successful, right?
I agree. And final thing, it's not just passive house anymore, because we know now with the Toronto Green Standard, the whole implementation is accelerated, and we know that we have to include thermal bridging. So it's not as if it is just for this community. It will become the norm for the industry, and it's down to us to lead the way and show, you know, lead by example. So really valid on a
no, it's a great point. I mean, we've seen, like, a lot of energy codes or standards, or, you know, systems like TGS are clearly kind of taking inspiration from Passive House, right? We're seeing people go to these absolute performance metrics, and we're seeing a lot of those numbers pretty close to what the numbers are that PHI is asking for. So I think you're right. It's, you know, we can sort of help show people the way, almost, you know, and say, yes, it can be done, and it can be done cost effectively, and we can make these buildings work, and we can deliver what we can deliver on, you know, those elements that you were discussing, Maureen, and sort of reaching that net zero and everything.
So I do have a question for you guys. I don't know, Jesse, if you want to say something, but so what I've been seeing, like, in the past year, suddenly I saw there were two moments that it was kind of, wow, finally, like windows. Like, suddenly we start having, at least in Ontario, right? Because everything was either Europe or BC until like a year ago. And then since I started, I was pushing inline windows to get certified, because there were good performing windows that we used to use, and then they never pay attention, and suddenly they're certified, like this year. And then we had also Gamma and other manufacturers that are like Ontario made, which is great, right? So finally you feel like, okay, we can have someone that is local, or kind of local. So that was like a good big moment. And then ERVs. So in the past 3 months, I've been hearing about, you know, Ventacity having a smaller unit, so it's kind of for a large house or a large small building, and then also Oxygen, like, providing like a smaller unit. So it's like, oh, finally, it's like, again, it's like, it's not just Sender, right? Or like a non-CSA certified unit, which is like, you know, we've been through, or many of us been through, like, okay, we're bringing a non-CSA certified, and then we cannot install it. And so that kind of gave me, at least, no, this past year, I've been feeling that. I don't know if the same for you guys.
No, 100%. It has been very cool to see this. It's picking up steam, right? And in more ways than one, in the component way, in the size of the projects, in the number of projects, in, you know, the number of people showing up to events like this, right? Like, you know,
Sure.
this is awesome. So we've sort of set aside some time here just for Q&A. If folks do have questions, you know, feel free to unmute your mic and just jump in or post something in the chat. And we really want this to be, you know, sort of conversational and responsive to the stuff that you guys are interested in talking about as well. So we'll open it up if anybody has anything they'd like to jump in with.
Yeah, and just to that point, I think the Q&A part, not just Q&A on the presentations, but Q&A, maybe suggestions for what we want to be doing with this time. You know, when the Toronto group, when we were last together in person, that was, you know, 2.5 or 3 years ago. And now that we're coming back together and having people here, hopefully preparing to move these to in person as soon as possible when it's safe. What should we be doing with this time? You know, what you know, Ontario or Toronto specific things do we want to focus on? I think we've all seen a number of presentations over the past 2 years on worldwide, you know, passive house projects. But it's really nice for us to maybe be focusing on what challenges and what opportunities we have right here, and kind of turn back into focus on our local community. So if anybody has any thoughts on that, absolutely happy to have you share.
Hi, it's Ian Small here. I was listening to the Passive House Accelerator podcast the other day, and I noticed that Australia, somewhere on the East Coast, has archetypes of buildings that they've put the plans out there for a passive house certified with all the numbers you need. Like Toronto's only got a certain amount of archetype houses, the older ones that need to be retrofitted. It kind of staggers me that there's nothing on the city website. It staggers that there's so many renovations happening right now, and no one's doing anywhere near a passive house level retrofit, at least not in my neighborhood. And the other thing is, like, the prices are through the roof, and then the people that have just bought these monster homes that they realize they're going to have to retrofit by 2040, you're going to have a heart attack. So yeah, that's, you know, I've written to my councillor recently to that point, but, you know, I don't know where to start, and I know you guys have policy advocates and are discussing with the city. I'm just curious to know where you are with those discussions and what's being done.
I am not a policy expert. I do know. I don't know the details, but Herman, maybe you remember one of the events we had at the PHPP user group. We actually had somebody from the city of Toronto come. He was discussing their home energy loan program, right? The HELP program.
HELP program, yeah.
Which, you know, it is not passive house specific, but it is sort of targeted at, you know, helping people to perform these kind of energy improving retrofits, right?
Right. So I can tell you the project that we visited, they applied to everything and they got everything, kind of, because it's like 100% of the things you can get from that program. Basically a passive house, if you're retrofitting, you can get it. It wasn't a huge amount of money, but it was good money. So I can tell you that. So we actually had a visit with Chris, with people from the city after that open thing that we did. And I knew from what they were talking to me, this was 2 years ago, right? A little more maybe, that there were like 2 or 3 projects ongoing, you know, detached houses. So no large projects. So that's as much as I know. I share your frustration. Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
this
I mean,
very
you know, I did a retrofit about 4 years ago, and I've since learned, you know, that luckily because I'd looked into the building science of most of the things I did, you know, I've got to upgrade my ERV because it's not working in some areas because it is tight enough and stuff. But I mean, most people, when you go to the city's website, and I'm sure Ontario, it doesn't lead you down the path like it does with the Vancouver and BC step code. there's nothing there. And I looked at the Toronto, typically written consulting reports, which is 40 pages of nothing. It doesn't lead you anywhere to build a better house. So, my neighbors are building houses, and they just do whatever the contractor tells them, which is build a house like you did 50 years ago.
So the Toronto Green Standard focuses on larger buildings, so it has to be over 2,000 square meters. So you have a point. Maybe, I don't know if Chris Ballard is still with us. He might know something that he can share with us in regards to smaller units or smaller size of buildings. But you do have a point. Unfortunately,
you do have some low rise in there as well, but the guidance is a lot more flexible, I guess. Like, they're not touching on absolute metrics with the very low rise. Like, you still have absolute metrics for, I think, mid-rise under 5 stories, but as soon as you go much lower than that, it gets a lot more flexible. But I still think that Passivhaus is accepted as an alternate way to prove like some type of compliance, but it's not.
Yeah, but it's not. It's a nice gesture. Like, for my personal experience, it's like it doesn't really give you. You don't save much energy. Let's go that way. Like, brain energy, and it's nice, but you're just saving $1,000 from a BCN number. Yeah. So but this is a great topic. Yeah. Go ahead.
Adam. So there are building codes that are being developed for the Retrofit Code. So, we've been participating in that for Passivhaus Canada. And that'll be for both Part 9 and Part 3 buildings. And then, though there isn't a lot of guidance, there is a retrofit curriculum that we developed after we did the Tower Retrofit Symposium. I think that course is quite helpful. So if you're interested in that, I would check that out as well for helpful guidance on how to retrofit buildings. I think there's a lot of potential in this area. I mean, that's why we did the symposium last year, and we're going to continue working for to help people reach the interfit standard, the low energy building standard. So if you have there's resources on our website, Passivhaus Canada, if you go under the About page on those standards. And then if you have additional questions, always feel free to reach out to us.
Cool. I see that Paula has her hand up. Did you have a question?
Yeah. Yes, just earlier someone had said that people are renovating houses and not realizing that they're going to have to redo them by 2040 to reach a new standard. Is that actual law? I mean, I think, if one could share that specifically with clients, that would be so helpful. And I'm just not sure how I would find that law that says, okay, 2040, you have to meet. I know that the Ontario Building Code is, has new standards that it's trying to reach as we move forward, but I didn't realize that those would apply to existing construction. I mean, in all honesty, the only conversation that I've had around existing construction was with the Tremco rep that was talking about how roofing replacements moving forward will have to meet new insulation standards. But that, so the 2040 dates, or could someone tell me where that came from exactly in terms of legislation? Thanks.
Chris, feel free to add to it, because I think you've talked a bit more with the city, but this was a draft version that the city was issuing about their about to be existing building code, and they were definitely tackling larger buildings first. I think that some of the requirements would be applying to smaller buildings and single family, but I think that similarly to new build, the single family for existing buildings would also be the last one to have to meet these requirements. So they're trying to tackle, I think, larger buildings where you have more energy being used in there before forcing that onto the homeowner.
Okay, so this is a draft document that the City of Toronto has prepared?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so
Chris and Chris, go for it.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything along these lines in Hamilton, and it would be great if it could be sort of more province-wide. Thanks.
Yeah, Chris, feel free to jump in.
Oh boy, where to start without derailing all sorts of things. So, what we do, we deal with 4 levels of governments in virtually every province across Canada. So there's so much going on and there's so much not going on. I think we find with the city of Toronto that it's often a matter of left hand and right hand not knowing what's going on, what's happening with each other. And it's a little bit scary. Sometimes, what can I say, almost slapstick hilarious that Passivhaus Canada, our small little organization, plays the interpreter, plays the communicator between different departments within the city. I know that, the city, I don't want to say there is a quiet, how do I phrase this without, I don't want to be insulting, but there is a growing panic, perhaps, within some elected officials, because we make it our business to talk to city councillors on a regular basis. And as they see the slides and the information that Maureen presented tonight, and they realize the runway day by day is growing shorter, they're looking for solutions. There's problems. They don't have the staff, they don't have the policy staff, they don't have the ability to implement what they see needs to be done. And I, just sent out a message in the chat to all of us that what we try to do at Passivhaus, with our mighty government relations staff of 1.5 people, is to present alternatives, to present pathways. It may be something this group could do, that we put together some policy points or a pathway forward that isn't as complex, that is a little more straightforward, so that that growing sense of panic is tempered with, but here is a path forward using the Passivhaus methodology to get to net zero. When the federal government talks 2050 for net zero, there's talk of moving that to 2045, maybe even to 2040. What the blazes does that mean for the city of Toronto? I have no idea. The city is coming to grips with the fact that the only way they'll ever get near their climate change GHG reduction targets is through deep energy retrofits. So lots to do. I don't think I've added much to the conversation other than there seems to be, I think there's more we could be doing in terms of sorting out, of helping the city, elected officials and staff do what needs to be done, and help with that internal communications. Maureen was great because she, early on when I met Maureen, she was leading Passivhaus Canada, doing training for City of Toronto staffers about the Toronto Green Standard. That was version 2, Maureen, or version 3?
Version 3.
Right. So
yeah.
we're bringing in version 4, and there's at least one city councillor is pushing for version 5 sooner rather than planned.
Well,
But there
has
just
been
needs.
announced.
Pardon?
It has been announced, like version 5 should come in application by 2025 and version
2025, and there's
by
others.
2028.
Yeah, there are some who want to move it back and make it faster. There's a report been requested from council to speed that up. What does this all mean for Passivhaus and net zero practitioners? You can see Marie just took a deep breath. So there's a lot, but I think, I'm excited with this group, and I can tell you the last time you folks met was 2 days after I became a CEO of Passivhaus Canada, and I had to be in a meeting in Kingston, and I couldn't make it back in time to join your Toronto meeting. So this is the first time we've got together. But my dream would be to be able to pick your brains and be able to say, what's our priorities for the city of Toronto? I mean, we've got the contacts, we knock on their door, but we don't know everything that you know. So that would help us in the months ahead. We don't have years ahead. In the days and months ahead, as we talk to Toronto, what would be a good pathway forward? So I will stop now, other than to say that we're all ears, and if there's some sort of informal gathering or way of gathering ideas together and helping us develop the key policy points or the pathway forward for Toronto to de-escalate the sense of the growing sense of stress, then I'm all ears.
City of Toronto can't even clean the roads. How are they going to be able to implement this? Like, let's call it what it is, really. At the end, people living in Toronto will understand that. Chris, I think it's great. I think we all know that the standard works. We all know Passive House works. The problem is going to be, unfortunately, what we're doing, Maureen and I have talked a lot over the last 6 months. Carbon is going to be a big issue. And I think that it's going to have to be market-based. And it's kind of like you buy a commercial building. You look at all your inputs that are on your expense side. On the residential side, I know Ian was bringing that up about Interfit, but the day is going to come that you're going to sell a house and it's going to be a like house across the street from you. They're both for sale. And one is going to be a high performance home, and people are going to pull out their gas costs or their electrical costs or whatever their costs to operate, and the other person, which has an obsolete home, doesn't have that ability. And I think the market's going to have to play that. So to me, as I wrote in the chat box, I think it's just big steps and small steps. I think we have the greater good, which is the greater umbrella, if you will, which is Passive House. But I think it's high performance. Like, do we need to move away? I think at the beginning, we need to move away from TIVAC. We need to either do a 475, or for Hans, it's a SIGA product on the outside for the air barrier, and then start working about the insulation and working this within everybody who's on an architectural side or on the consulting side. I think it has to be that grassroots, and irrespective of everything else, it's whoever has a relationship, which Chris, you and we have talked about. I have a relationship with one of the counselors, is go out and talk with that counselor and get Chris in front, or get Maureen in front, or get whomever in front from Passive House Canada, and have these informal grassroots conversations. That's where we're going to start with this. I think if we're shooting so high, we know where we are. If we shoot so high, it's just going to go over everybody's heads, and that's where the pushback is coming from. Like, developers don't want to, as we know, developers don't want to spend money. They want to make money, and anytime that there's a push, if they can push it back with their clout, we have to, from a grassroots point of view, push it back. And there's nothing wrong with making money. I'm a builder. I want to make money, but who's going to pay for it at the end of the day? And how does it get pushed? And then as we squish down and we capture this, like they're doing in Vancouver, there's nowhere else for them to go, because the standard is the standard is the standard. And to me, that's the steps that we have to do. I don't think shooting up so high is really going to help us right now. I think we have a goal, but we have to have the incremental steps to get there. That's just me. And I've been saying this for a year. And also about the snow, I've been saying that for more years than I want to talk about.
So it has to have at one point, no one wants to spend money, not even clients or us. I mean, I don't want to spend more money than I have to. And my personal experience shows that policy or, the code is a minimum standard to build a house that doesn't fall. So due to the situation we are now, the code should be a minimum standard so the house doesn't generate CO2, because we're running out of oxygen. So or we're having too much CO2. Let's go that way better. Anyway, I think Chris provided a good kind of push. If there's people interested on like generating a committee or some like informal meeting, at least to start, I'm all for it. So that's a good thing we can take from here as well.
Yeah, 100%. Brandon, I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, just wanted to share a little bit of my experience. having worked with the city of Toronto actually on some of their shelter programs. And they're actually on at least 2 of them and a few more. They were in the design phase still, but they have as a goal to sort of reach as close to net zero high performance sort of design as they can. And I know it's already a hard topic, but I think it's worth mentioning in the current climate. Like one issue that we're running into is that they have the one hand energy use reduction, but then they're also increasing ventilation rates in order to like sort of help deal with virus management. And that's a big problem we're running into on these projects where we actually can't reach, the passive house levels of energy performance, even with, as high performance design as we can manage. And in these projects, budget is not really a concern. It's basically this is about as good as we can make it work. So just in terms of, I guess, just wanted to inject that into the conversation as a little extra sort of consideration when we talk to these politicians. They're also, there's lots of other considerations, including this, ventilation rates, which they're, it's hard to balance everything.
Yeah, you bring a good point, Brendan, and I want to say I've been pleasantly surprised. We're working with Creatio on a few projects, and I think they've been very open into saying we need to solve all these questions. Can we do pilot projects to start seeing if these targets are even feasible for smaller buildings? Because we know these absolute targets get really hard when you're down to really small buildings and single family dwellings, as well as other points like you just brought up in terms of having different requirements that tear you in different directions. And so I'm happy that at least we are seeing pilot projects that are, again, same with mass timber. We need mass timber for lower embodied carbon footprint for our buildings. And we are seeing pilot projects with, okay, can you tell us what are all the challenges we're going to get into if we start building mass timber built, like, tier 4, low operational and low embodied mass timber buildings past, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 stories and what's going on. So I can see that the industry is starting to understand that we have to find the best compromise because, indoor air quality and, COVID management and all of that is definitely as important as the rest. So I don't know, I'm hoping 2022 is like the year for pilot projects. We get to see a little bit more. We get to highlight where the discrepancies are, like different requirements asking us to jump through different hoops, and then just learn from that and adapt these metrics adequately to the different type of buildings we're faced with.
Cool. So we are running short on time. I see maybe we'll take one more comment from Chris, and then I think we got to wrap it up here for tonight.
I was just going to say that I think, the same way when we sell a vehicle, we have to do a safety inspection. The ministry requires it. And that's, because we want to check on emissions and the safety of the vehicle as itself. I think in the future, we'll have something similar for buildings that, when you go to sell your building, your emissions will be evaluated to make sure the building is operating before it can be sold. So that might be one of the triggers that we see, but there'll be many different triggers for renovations.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so our discussion, our Q&A there ran a bit long, but it was a very interesting discussion, so I did not want to cut it off. So I think, to respect everybody's time here and let everybody get out for dinner, we're gonna have to cut our second breakout room session here. But I hope that discussion we had was really helpful, and kind of I think that piece that we just had is sort of where we want to take this, right? We want this to be really a discussion with everybody, and so thank you everybody for showing up and for speaking up, really, because it's very easy to sit on a Zoom camera off and just listen to people talk. And that very specifically, if we were going to do this, we said we don't want this to be that. We want this to be something way more. We want it to be as close to as if we were in person as possible. So and going back to in person when we can. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
We did have someone asking about LCA and cradle to yeah, so that's a topic we should bring up for sure. We have
Yes.
someone within PH Passive House community that specializes on that. He's in Quebec, but sure we can bring Philippe.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, and that's something that I think at every event going forward, we're certainly happy to chat about what people want to see, what's working, revise things, take this really in a way that the community gets the most out of it possible, because that is what this is about, right? This is for all of us, everybody on this call. So once again, I'll just say thank you everybody for joining tonight. We are going to be holding these events, these Toronto Pulse events, the second Thursday of every month going forward, which makes our next event Wednesday, March 9th from 5 to 6:30 again, Eastern Standard Time. Passivhaus Canada will be posting these events, the invites and the signups on their social media, as well as their website. So keep your eyes on that. And once again, thanks to SIGA for sponsoring the event, and thank you to everyone for showing up. I hope everybody has a great night. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.